Well, what Rishi Sunak and the government are trying to do here is mend what they feel is a rupture with the voting coalition that backed the Tories in 2019. They sense that there is real dissatisfaction. Some MPs, one of them is just reporting to me, it's an existential issue on the doorstep for many of these voters, immigration. And what the government is, this week we expect, maybe this week falling into next week as well, is trying to deal with legal migration and illegal migration and trying to get round that Supreme Court judgment on Rwanda, which blocked their path last month. But what they're doing most of the time in what was announced today was reversing incentives for migration, for migrants to come to this country, which they themselves put there. They haven't quite put out all the fires that are alight on the Tory backbenches, but they have, with some of the announcements today, sprinkled a bit of water on those fires.
The levels of legal migration into this country are simply too high. I think the numbers are too high. Numbers are too high. It's as simple as that.
The government's added a new mantra alongside stop the boats, cut the visas. Legal migration has soared. Many arrive on government visas to work in sectors like care. Some bring dependents. Today, the government said the offers designed to lure them in were being drastically cut back.
I can announce a 5-point plan to further curb immigration abuses and that will deliver the biggest ever reduction in net migration.
The income threshold for skilled workers visas goes up to $38,700, up a third. Health and social care workers are exempted from that. But workers on health and social care visas will no longer be allowed to bring in dependents. The government said it would end the scheme that allowed some employers to bring in overseas workers at 20% below the going wage rate, and the shortage occupation list will be reviewed and reduced.
This package of measures, taken in addition with the measures on student dependence that we have already announced in May, means that around 300,000 fewer people will be eligible to come to the UK than were coming last year. This is the largest reduction on record.
Several Tory MPs nodded support. Labour said they had pushed Rishi Sunak into a new policy.
And the Prime Minister is just crashing around all over the place, reversing policies that he introduced, criticising policies he defended 6 months ago, and introducing new immigration policies without any of the economic policies to match. The previous Prime Minister was accused of being a shopping trolley, veering around from one side to the other. The current Prime Minister is clearly veering, but he certainly isn't steering. He's just climbed into someone else's shopping trolley and he's being pushed around all over the place.
At this Folkestone care home, they welcomed the exemption from the higher salary threshold for care workers, but worried that the loss of dependents' visas could hurt recruitment.
If I will be in this situation after this announcement and I'm going to that time in my visa process, maybe I'm also, maybe I'm not also coming. Because we all know if it's very difficult to survive with the family, without family also.
Our reaction to the announcement is one of some relief, in as much as there's an exemption on the salary that skilled workers needs to be paid. So huge relief on that. Our sector can continue to sustain itself with the same wages for international workers as we pay local workers on the living wage. So big relief there. Bit disappointed that it's going to be harder for dependents to come because the folk that come that we want to attract from abroad are those who will want to be here long term and will want to have their families with them.
The government's wrestling not with net migration from the EU, which plummeted in the years since the Brexit referendum, but net migration from outside the EU, peaking last year, in part a consequence of some of the government incentives the Home Secretary said it would now reverse.
I think that a lot of what we're seeing is a reversal of liberalisations that the government introduced just a few years ago. However, I think that not all of the increase that we've seen in legal migration was actually a predictable result of those policies. I think partly what happened was that there was a little bit of a liberalisation and it looked quite small on paper, but then the response to that from people around the world choosing to come to the UK was much more enthusiastic than the government had predicted.
3 weeks into his job, James Cleverly is expected in Rwanda soon as the government tries to shift the focus back onto illegal migration and its attempts to find a way around last month's Supreme Court judgment.
Well, I've been speaking to the Conservative chair of the Health and Social Care Committee, Steve Bryan, and I began by asking about the impact these changes will have on recruiting care workers.
The number of care vacancies in England is down. It's down from 164,000 to a mere 151,000 at the moment. Now, that's still a lot of people. And the reason why the numbers have come down is because people who've come in on the shortage occupation list, foreign workers, have filled those roles. Now, I understand from the statement today that the government want homegrown workers to fill these roles and through the skills strategy of this country. And that's absolutely fine. But right now, I don't see that producing the care workers that we need to fill the social care sector. Now, the political calculation is whether meeting your political headline take back control is going to be more important than people being able to find a care home for mum, care home for dad, or a doctor's appointment to get on top of the waiting lists. And that's the decision that's been taken today.
I mean, that's a very blunt way of putting it. I mean, you are saying it's going to be much harder in the care sector. People won't get care for their elderly relatives because there won't be enough care workers coming in to take those jobs. It's to basically keep a bunch of your right-wing colleagues happy.
If we're saying that we want to just reduce immigration, and even the opposition are saying that as well, okay, there's an intellectual argument there, but you then have to be honest with people. You have to be honest about the implications that will have for the health and care sector.
Do you think the government is now in the zone where it is taking decisions that are just about the next election and what happens after that, rather than what's best for the economy, for the health service, for people's families?
So let me be generous. The Home Secretary today announced a 5-point plan. He talked about clamping down on dependence of students. Absolutely. He talked about stopping people coming here on student visas and then switching out of student visas into some other kind of visas. Absolutely. But he's also now talked about clamping down on the dependence of people who come here to work in the health and care system. And he said he and the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, have crunched the numbers, quote, end quote, worked very hard to understand that what that's going to do is it's only going to impact on the people who come with them, not the people who come here to do those caring works, to look after mum, to look after dad in those dementia care homes. Now, I want to see the impact assessment behind that. We have the Health Secretary in before my select committee next week, and I give her notice now. We will be asking for those workings out behind that.
There's another element of this which isn't getting quite so much attention, but it's about bringing your spouse or partner to Britain or keeping them here, and they will now have to earn over £38,000 a year. This could, really split up families, couldn't it?
Well, yes, it could. And I mean, I think what will happen is they won't come. And I think that the health and care worker, who would be the one who the government say, well, they'll come anyway, I don't think they'll come. There's a global marketplace. If we don't make it a welcoming environment for them and their important dependents, then maybe they'll just say, we'll go somewhere else. Everywhere I go in the economy, we have a shortage of key people in the key roles. And so, take back control? Absolutely. But maybe take back control in our interests, not against our interests.
Steve Bryan, thank you very much.